All right, we're here for ECONversations. This is Patrick Ellis and Gina Gonzalez. You guys have a new business coming.
Gina,
tell us about the announcement.
What's the big announcement today?
Trader Joe's is not coming.
Hey, Patrick.
And so there are some real concerns with, everybody. This is the number one thing that all communities are asked for.
We're going to lead off the segment with this on the webpage.
So let me just tell you, Menifee, we had residents that went so far as to take one of our coming soon signs on Newport, and someone went and put on their Trader Joe's coming soon and posted it on social media about 2 years ago.
Oh no.
And it created some positive storm for Trader Joe's. Was like, what?
Let's just all go get banners made now.
But the demographics that they look for, I mean, we're not the only region that's, trying to go after Trader Joe's, but they're number one in most cities on all the lists, right? On all lists. So there's more to it than that.
Well, and speaking of Trader Joe's, I have a funny Murrieta story with Trader Joe's. Way back when I worked for the city of Murrieta with Mr. Bruce Coleman, we were taking a lot of heat at that time for not being able to get a Trader Joe's in Murrieta. And there was a blog going on. It was like Patch or something like that. And it was a blog, and someone on there said, "Why don't you guys just call them?" And so Bruce and I would laugh. That was kind of our comic relief in a meeting. If we, if things were getting too serious or too heated or something, we would just look at each other and go, "Just call them. It's so simple. Why didn't we think of that? We could have just called them and they would just come to Murrieta. Like, gosh, what do we sit here doing all day long at City Hall? We could have just called them years ago." And so it's obviously not that easy. It doesn't work quite like that.
And Bruce, wherever you are, we hold you in that high esteem. We're still calling you Mr. Bruce Coleman.
Oh, we thought that was so funny. Just call them. We'd say that to each other all the time. But it's, I guess to move along with this topic, if that's what we want to do, it's,
Have we started?
People need to understand.
I think so.
Retailers come with a laundry list of things that they want to see. For example, I know when we were trying to put a Dunkin' Donuts in, they want to be on the morning side of traffic. There's like a law, and by the way, Dunkin' Donuts doesn't want to go in a plaza where Starbucks already is. And so, you start looking around and going, okay, morning side of traffic, near the freeway, not near the freeway, no Starbucks, near a Starbucks. They have, depending on who they are and what they're selling, they have a laundry list of places where they will go or won't go. And when you start looking around, now she's got the Cheesecake Factory coming up.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce that there's going to be a new economic development director opening coming up in the city of Menifee.
Are you kidding? Menifee is ripping it. They actually need to expand their department with all these new companies coming in.
That's right.
I don't know what they're doing.
Springboard Murrieta and go right to Menifee with the Cheesecake
This is part of our marketing plan, is to grab attention. So as the rumor starts, then they start to look, where's Menifee? Have you heard of Menifee? Yes. Fastest growing city, 105,000 residents,
Maybe one of these
90,000 on our
companies,
freeways, 90,000 median income. Be here.
Gina, maybe they accidentally think that they're running behind on their development schedule. They see the coming soon sign and they start submitting plans really quick.
Yeah.
It could work out.
You never know.
Get the plans
You
yet?
never know.
We will try every category possible to get them in. No, but you're absolutely right, Kim, when it comes to, as far as the demographics and what they look for. And it's more than just calling, but it's the relationships, that we're all having to develop over time.
I think the long and short of it is there's a lot going on behind the scenes that most people in the general public never get to see and never really understand. So, but and that to some extent is job security for us, because if it was really a phone call, that Mayor Nigg could have made the first day that he became mayor of Wildomar to get Trader Joe's there, or Nordstrom's, or whatever the big name ticket is at the moment, he would have already done it. It would already be done. If it was that easy, someone would have already done it and it would be done. It's not. It's about relationships. It's about finding the right spot at the right time. It's about getting the property owners. You could have the best spot all day long, but if your property owner has pie in the sky ideas that their property is worth 10 times what the going rate is for that property, that property is going to sit vacant for the next 20 years if you can't. And
Or-
there's not a thing you can do about that, by the way. We can't force a property owner to make a deal with somebody.
Or if the neighbor is a competitor,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, I mean,
The
that
prime
very well,
location that Panera wants is also right where Starbucks is located. They can't go right next to each other. They won't go next to each other. So yeah, it's like a game of Monopoly. It's like playing Monopoly, only you don't really control the board. And when you land on a space, somebody else already owns it. So you got to work with them to try to put your hotel there or, whatever. So it's a lot of balls in the air all at one time. And it's interesting. I mean, it's what I love about it, because it's like when you finally do get that win, and it doesn't come easy, but man, when you do, and when you see it going in, or that coming soon sign is finally there, or even better, when you get to walk into that establishment finally, maybe after having seen it on paper for years and working on it for years, and so many hurdles in place, like the one I'm thinking of is Downtown Public in Murrieta. When I finally got to walk into that restaurant, I literally cried, because it was like 5 years of just endless hurdles that had nothing to do with the city, but had everything to do with the city trying to get him through those hurdles. And when you finally walk in and you can sit down and actually have dinner, it was just like, those are the reasons why we all show up to work again the next day, because for that one win, there was probably 25,000 losses that didn't go through, And so it's those wins that we get that really keep us going, and the prospect of that win, but we don't always get a lot of them. We don't get a lot of yeses. We don't, even if you find the most perfect spot but you get the retailer to look at your city, that's hurdle number one. You find them the most perfect spot, then I can almost guarantee you the property owner isn't playing ball with you.
Yep.
So it gets thrown out of whack again, so it's a lot of pieces, a lot of moving
and
parts.
it's so hard, because when the community goes, why can't you bring this in, Kim? And it's like, you know what? We're encouraging it. We have had discussions, but you necessarily can't say, hey, the property owner
I know.
didn't make the deal,
And-
Right. You don't want to throw anybody under the bus, for sure.
And to a certain extent, that's why a lot of times you see these sort of formulaic shopping centers, because you have one developer that controls the whole thing, and they bring kind of their stock, it's the Cold Stone ice cream, and it's the nail salon right next door, and it's the
Yep.
sort of the canned tenants, with nothing against them, but instead of these one-offs that you have to sort of fit somewhere, you end up having this large center, and they take sort of the low-hanging fruit that kind of comes as a package, so that you have the same restaurant and the same ice cream store and the same coffee shop,
And a lot of
and
national brands too.
yeah, and you can just package that and stick it anywhere, and it's they go through the trouble once and they've got an entire center, whereas we're talking about maybe some of these more unique, or even not necessarily chains, but they're small, there's 2 or 3 of them and they're extremely popular, but you have to try to fit it into either an individual parcel or fit it into another development. And as Kim mentioned, it can be challenging to do that. And then you have the development cycle, because you still have to, you may have to go through entitlements and permitting, and that can take a while to do that. And then, the one other thing too, that last but not least, is you do get some of these national, or these chains that people want, but they've got 5 other projects they have to complete first in other parts of either Southern California or the Southwest. So they want to build in Southwest Riverside County, but I've got 2 in Phoenix and 2 in Nevada that I have to get done. And that's a 2 to 3 year, lifespan, development cycle before I can even take these on first. And, sometimes it's just the pecking order of things going on within that chain, in addition to whatever the local requirements are.
And we had the challenge when I was with the city of Corona, because as Scott knows, because he lives in Corona, Corona has a lot of chains up there. And so we were really trying to make a push to get more mom and pops. And I remember distinctly talking to one plaza owner saying, we really love to encourage you to put more mom and pops. And they said, we can't. They don't come with the money. They don't show us the money. We can sign a national chain, they've got the paper backing for it, and we can get them in no problem. We don't have time to mess around with mom and pops. And that's a challenge too, because as a city government, yeah, we wanted to see more mom and pops there, but again, there is a limit to what your government should be meddling with in business. And our hands are tied sometimes. We are limited. I always like to tell the story. If a plaza owner wants to put in all dry cleaners, they have 25 spots in their plaza, they want to put in all dry cleaners. They can, legally they can, just common sense wise, that doesn't make sense. The market isn't going to bear 25 dry cleaners. Probably 24 of them are going to go out of business, maybe all 25. But that's not an area where the government can step in and say, you can't put in 25 dry cleaners. We can't do that. You don't want us doing that. That's private business. That is that plaza owner's decision if he wants to run his plaza that way, or she. So that's kind of when I'm talking to a public group, that's how I try to get them to understand where our limitations are. We can't always control what goes into a plaza, and whether it's all mom and pops or no mom and pops or all national brands or all franchises. We don't have that kind of detailed control in a lot of circumstances.
That's what
We'd like
gives.
to.
Oh, sorry, Kim. I was
No,
waiting
what?
for the appropriate pause to come in and just reminisce about the
You'll
beauty.
be waiting for a long time with me. I don't ever pause.
and I never jump in at the right moment. But that's what gives it character, right? So some cities should really embrace the fact that they can attract those national brands, because there's a reason why they're national brands and people love them. And some cities should embrace the fact that they're a mom and pop and they've got the boutique restaurants, and that's what gives each of your cities uniqueness and character, and that's what makes us all special and different and odd and weird and strange. And so, in Corona's case, and sometimes it just takes getting to the next generation of space, right? Everybody's proud when they first build the development and they think they're going to fill it with a national tenant, but sometimes it's the second or third generation guest that's going to come in and bring something different and unique. And so that's just part of the evolution of that retail center or that site.
Plaza behind me in Wildomar is almost all mom and pops. We're very proud of that. We have a lot of mom and pops in Wildomar. And how that plaza got to be, pretty much all mom and pops, I'm not sure, but it's wonderful.
I'm sure that a lot of times if it's cash development, they have more flexibility to do that. But if they're not all cash developments, and then they have to have that 70-30% mix, to obtain the construction financing, and that requires a lot of national tenants and in order to qualify. And some landlords or developers go a little bit further than the 70% and don't want to take any risk when it comes to mom and pops. And I've seen that too. And it makes it very difficult because you guys are describing exactly what we're going through from a generational issue. And I keep having to explain over and over that Menifee is, a lot of new construction, and we don't have, existing development to where it's been around for 10 or more years, to where they don't have to owe money on the loans, so they can reduce the rent and make it affordable for mom and pops. And even if it's a mom and pop that can afford the high rent and willing to take the risk, now the new owner or the owner that doesn't have to pay that loan to the bank is willing to take on that person, but so is the developer themselves or the owner of the property. So it's a generational issue. Temecula went through it at one time too, and Murrieta, you went through it on your early stages. So it's just a matter of timing, Kim, and you're kind of going what we're going through too with new development coming on. But you're right, it'll take an all cash builder that's willing to take that risk. And you're absolutely right. That's a beautiful center behind you. You have like the Bean and Finch and some of the mom and pop, like the boba tea place as well. And so, and Evergold's a mom and pop. They're not a national brand. They're still small mom and pop owned. And
the other thing that I think we probably talked, I don't know if we've ever talked about it on ECONversations, but it's this idea too that we all know that the nature of retail is changing, and so some of these most desired retailers are and it's a little bit different obviously in food service in restaurants. I mean, you do have some restaurants that will pull that are destination locations, but if it's a neighborhood type restaurant, those are, going to want to be kind of near the people that they serve, generally speaking, or a nail salon or an ice cream place, or, kind of those types of things. Most people aren't going to drive from Temecula to Riverside for an ice cream shop or vice versa, but they may go there for a certain type of steakhouse or something like that. So the more, some of these bigger ones like Nordstrom, for example, we used to have 2 Nordstroms in the inland region, and they've contracted. And, a lot of that has to do with e-commerce that, we're just not buying things the way that we used to buy things. So, I know that the Southwest area and other parts of this region have wanted Nordstroms. Well, they're kind of retracting, it looks like, it appears, to a more of a destination. Like, you have to come to Orange County if you want to go to Nordstrom or LA or whatever, but otherwise you can order it online. And I think some of those places that, we most desire in our communities may be changing their models and how they locate stores, where it's like, if you want a brick and mortar store, you're going to have to travel to wherever, or you're going to get one for your entire region and everything else is, e-commerce, because more people are ordering on Nordstroms.com. And then you can just come return it to our store, or however they handle it. And I think that, that's also shifting and changing. So maybe not so much pandemic related, but it's more of shopping habit related, that, we're just ordering more stuff online. And so we don't need to pay the lease rates. The employment isn't happening at your retail store, it's happening at the logistics facility down the road. And so your neighbors may work there, but it's not a retail store you can go kind of touch it, feel it, and try it on. And so that's another thing that's happening, is this. And certainly I think the pandemic has exacerbated or accelerated some of those, decision making on behalf of these retailers of, do we want to put all those retail stores out there? Do we want to just accelerate it to where you can come here and check it out, but really you might as well just order it online?
Yeah, Rob, first of all, I want to congratulate you for saying inland region, because if you said the word empire, I was going to get my pitchfork and come down and find you. Like, it is nice to hear people moving away from the inland empire. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, when you think about a city like Menifee, who I'm sure your occupancy rate in retail is 96, 97%, we're really playing in the narrow margins here, right? It's not like you have a whole lot of vacancy available, Gina, to even go after some of these national tenants. I mean, you're a pretty full retail city, and everything's coming in with new development along the way. Not to speak for Menifee.
Of course not.
Out of hand.
You got the eyelash blinking there.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm waiting. It seems like there's a response to that. But I mean, in reality, you guys are largely full. We're in an environment right now where retail is filling up, and it's going to be hard to tell how long we really see what happens in the post-COVID world. But our retail spaces have historically low vacancy rates.
Very low.
Spaces are not available,
No.
so tenants are having a hard time shopping for space these days. Industrial is even worse. I mean, the only opportunity out there is office, and that's because telework has created an environment where you don't need as large a footprint for office space. But even that's doing
For
relatively well.
Some cities, I have nothing. So
Well,
we have office here. We are dying for office space because of the lack of supply.
We are too. We've got 3% vacancy in office, 1% in industrial. But, I just went through the exercise of trying to find someone's second generation restaurant space in our valley. The whole freaking valley has no second generation restaurant space. You have one spot?
The former Unique Tap House over in the old Furniture Row is vacant second generation restaurant space.
That's probably too big for what
it's a very large space. And that's the other problem that we get into, which is everyone has a very specific size they're looking for, right? And
I have a space, but I just don't want to say much more than that.
Well, let me know. But really, I mean, there's almost no second generation.
There's only 2 to our point.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
And we have none in Wildomar. That being said, we still have a lot of build out to do in that arena as well. So what we do have, we don't have anything second generation, and it can be very cost prohibitive for a mom and pop type establishment to have to put in a commercial kitchen last time I priced it out, probably 10 years ago, was $200,000, probably
Easy.
$400,000 nowadays. And
Plus
that's
the
just
grease
to build
trap.
out the kitchen, never mind the health permits and
Mhm.
all of the food handlers
Yep.
permits and everything else that go in the refrigeration that's needed and the water connection to water and everything else that goes along with it. So a lot of these, a lot of mom and pops and even established national chains want second generation restaurant sites because it's much easier and cheaper for them. But it's really hard to come by. I think in most of Riverside County, there's not a whole lot of second generation restaurant sites.
Well, if we just isolated 100 square miles of land and 2 second generation restaurant spaces, I think that tells a story right there. It's really impossible to find.
Couldn't tell the story better right there.
Well,
Yeah.
and another interesting dynamic is this sort of combination of retail and industrial. And that is that, one of the gaps that I think that the Amazons of the world figured out, in particular Amazon, was that last mile delivery, right? And that's why they couldn't get you the stuff in an hour or two. It became logistically impossible. And I've seen in other areas where they're taking over, an old Macy's or a JC Penney store in the mall, and Amazon is renting it out, and that's part of their last mile delivery, right? It's
Right.
and how that's kind of changing too, because they'll snap it up if you let them. And in some places, where those malls are just dead, it's a great alternative for them because they're not going to get anything else to go in there. And some of us in Riverside County may be faced with that. It's like, what do you put in? I mean, I think there's a lot of different choices, but it may not be that big box retailer again. Probably won't be.
There's not a lot of different choices.
The market is going that way. And to your point, it's this mixed use shared perspective, a lot like what you've seen like in Eastville with the Goodman Center that's there. You're starting to see it look very different. And to your point, Rob, when it comes to online shopping, that is the new mall of today, unfortunately. And so that is where the sales tax is for some communities. It's not in, an open air market or a promenade that we all love, don't get me wrong, but it's not, the market is calling for something completely different than what we're used to seeing. And I mean, that's a hard thing for a lot of communities to grasp and understand how it's changing and how it looks different versus being able to see something that maybe is, I don't know, developed, 20, 30 years ago. And that isn't what development's doing today and what developers are wanting to do because of the market. They have to respond to the market. So we're kind of going through that more as well. And how does that look and how do we find a balance? There is a business park industrial component to it. And then how do you get some of that commercial frontage to where you get that daytime population as well on some of your more prominent corridors. So yeah, it's I would say it's a conundrum that we're actually physically dealing with ourselves as a community.
Wow. I love, first of all, conundrum. Well done, Gina Gonzalez, and proper context and everything. Second of all, frozen yogurt's never as good from online purchases. So there's always going to be a reason for brick and mortar retail.
But not 40, 50 acres worth is what the conversation is. So, if you're talking about 5 to 10, yes, but not 40 to 50 large, power centers like they used to be. It's just very different.
Well, yeah, and we struggle with those. A lot of retail centers are just overbuilt. And that's why you see
Yeah.
the shift in uses is that there are tenants for these spaces, and retail will always fill its brick and mortar spaces, right? It's
Yeah.
just going to be what kind of users are in there. And so when you look around
As a
industrial
major
complexes
yeah.
where you see gyms that used to be in retail spaces, and then you look around retail spaces and you see educational centers and you see churches, places are just mingling and mixing to fill those spaces because there's a demand in the market and there's existing built out space.
And they need that major tenant, to your point, in order to justify even pulling a construction loan to even, I guess, justify the center even being developed. So without that, to your point, you just have yourself a strip center. And that is not very lucrative for a developer to spend all those on-site costs for a tiny little strip center that you may, make maybe $1.2 million and that's it. Versus 10. So doesn't really pay the dividends to justify it. So that's why the market, we're starting to see that shift, and it's not what we're all used to. Let me tell you, the struggle is real. But Rob's got it all figured out.
Thank goodness for Rob.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all lean on Rob. We do miss the Wilson days though.
You guys,
I know.
I've seen a real good shift in the market, especially probably in the last like month and a half. I would say it's always been kind of slow and steady since the pandemic, but gosh, I want to say I've really seen an uptick in the last month or so. And I don't know if you guys are also feeling that. But I feel like it's almost, I say, and dare I say, back to somewhat kind of normal from the phone calls again.
You're just saying in general?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I really have seen, the meetings are coming back. They're wanting to, everybody's starting to do tours again, field tours coming out, the phone's ringing off the hook and things are being booked back to back again. It's a nice change.
Phone's been ringing. We're talking about other things other than COVID.
Yeah.
I was driving on the freeway the other day. It was a Sunday and there was a ton of traffic, and it wasn't like Sunday night coming back from, Palm Springs or the desert. It was just a regular Sunday. And I remember going somewhere and I forgot that I had to take my mask with me in the car because my mind didn't have that train of thought. I was just like, this feels like a normal time. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
I completely got lost and realized, oh crap, I need to take a mask with me. And I left my house not realizing, and I didn't have one in the car, which I usually carry. And it was like, oh yeah, that's right. The place I'm going to still requires me to have a mask inside. And yeah, I think the mind shift is kind of changing. And I think, consumer confidence stats show that it's really high, I think, with vaccines and everything. And then everywhere else is completely opening up, or at least a lot of places are. And I personally don't think that I think we're done with the dimmer or the toggle. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I don't think there's any going back at this point. I think it's only going forward. I thought you were flipping me off, Scott, but
Not really.
that's what it looked
You're
like.
number one.
You never know.
Turns out
Scott, you
my
never
old
know.
arthritic fingers can barely cross. That was as good as I can do.
So yeah, I get the sense that, I get it. I'm not to minimize or suggest that anybody shouldn't do that, but it just seems like we're on a path to normalcy again.
Yeah.
People want to get back to business. And I know, just like Gina said, the phone's been ringing doesn't necessarily mean, we'll see, I guess. It's not that easy. The phone doesn't just ring and then 2 days later, somebody's moving into a property.
No.
So it's like, it still remains to be seen whether some of these things are going to pan out, but it's connecting these developers with property owners, encouraging them to talk, encouraging the property owner to be realistic about things and, work with them to negotiate. But we're back to that sort of thing now, which was kind of lagging last year. It seems like most of the conversations were around COVID and around just that. So we're kind of more back to business, and it feels good to be back to business.
Right.
It feels good to be back to feeling somewhat normal, even though we're not totally normal, but we're
Fortunately,
definitely heading that way.
I've never felt somewhat normal, but I think I think you're all right. I think we're all starting to get those calls and have those conversations. Then it just goes into the development cycle that Rob and Kim alluded to earlier, which is this is filling the pipeline for that next generation of company that we know is going to be there. And we have to start having those conversations now because things are going to be booming in 2 years, I assure you.
I'm
And
not sure
at
it'll
that
take
point-
that long.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think it's going to take that long either. I think this summer is going to be ridiculous. But I would want to be, for example, if I was building in a hotel, I would want to have started 8 months ago. Right?
Yeah,
I
right.
think you're already behind the curve right now.
That's right.
These kinds of projects should be coming, and restaurants should look to come back. And I know there's going to be a lag on certain industries, but there is certainly going to be a demand to get back out and sit down and have a full service meal for all of those. And some restaurants have gone out of business. It's going to put an even greater stress on the existing sit downs that are still there. I think that you're going to see a really busy market, and people should really start thinking ahead now.
I'll give you an example. There's a little, we're already kind of through a cycle with that. In that last March, when we went into the full lockdown, stay-at-home orders, there was a couple of on a side street here that was there was a couple of restaurants that were mostly serving county and city employees because they're just kind of tucked away on a side street in downtown Riverside. And they both shut down and they never reopened. And they just basically gave the keys back to the to the owner.
Wow.
And there's 2 new restaurants that are getting ready to reopen because they've spent the last year, or it hasn't taken them that long, but they've been doing tenant improvements. They combined a couple of the suites. And so you're gonna have 2 new restaurants that are opening up in that space. And it really stinks for the prior owners. And I don't wish that on anybody, but we already have a lot of places that they're just getting ready for that next wave, new entrepreneurs, expanding entrepreneurs. And again, it really stinks. And I feel awful for the people that lost their business. I really do. But I use that example to illustrate the point that I think there's people that are already positioned to, open new businesses, expand existing businesses, and just get back into it. And I think we're going to be in for a feeding frenzy over the next year or so, especially, when you start having like Disney and some of these other big theme resorts hiring thousands of people at a time. While they're not new jobs per se, but they haven't been around for a year. So it's economic, speaking from an economist point of view, yes, they're new jobs because we're at this X level of employment. But still, those folks haven't, maybe they've done other things and they moved on to other jobs, and maybe others are still looking or waiting. But then you're gonna have all these people back in the pipeline, with the new GDP and wages and all that. And I think you're gonna have labor shortages in some more than we have now.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, the white collar jobs have actually increased in wages and increased in number. It's the blue collar jobs that have been waiting to go back. Like you said, when Disneyland reopens, I think those jobs a lot of those workers have been waiting for their job to come back. And there's a huge opportunity there for us to get back to the ridiculously good numbers. When the stock market hits bottom, that's usually the time to invest, right? And so we watched our economy artificially hit bottom, but any industry should be looking to jump right back in right now and start investing in their business and starting getting their employees back.
Very good. Well, I think that's a good place to end this on a very positive note like that. So thank you all for joining us for this week's eConversations. Look forward to joining us in the future. We've got some good guests coming up. So keep tuned with what's going on with the Southwest Riverside County Economic Development eConversations. Thanks, y'all.
Wow.